It has to mean that he already has secured a line of credit, that the contingencies with respect to any line of credit are not such to make it questionable whether or not he can actually obtain the financing that he has promised the world he already has secured.
And separately, when he says in one of the other tweets that he has shareholder support, or support confirmed, I think was his phrase, investor support confirmed, what does that have to mean?
That's very strange, because there are firm rules that the SEC adopted many decades ago that govern going private transactions. And shareholders cannot support a proposal that hasn't yet been made or exists. He may mean that he has talked to investors who say they would be in favor of a transaction that would take the company out of its public status, but that's a very problematic tweet on his part.
If you were running the SEC right now, would you be investigating him right now based on these tweets? Do you think they are? Are they compelled to go to him right now and say, you said the financing's secured, is it?
Well, I would, if I were there, I would, of course, defer to the people in our enforcement division. But my view is that there's enough here for people to ask questions. Whether or not he's done anything illegal is far from certain, but there are enough questions that I would think we would need answers before we could decide whether we were going to pursue it or not.
And in terms of how that would happen, meaning just walk us through the permutations. You're inside the SEC, you see these tweets come across, you see the announcement. There's a meeting, I imagine. Does that happen yesterday? Does that happen today? Do you send a letter immediately to Tesla saying, please send us who you have financing commitments from? I mean, is that how this works?
Yeah,
or is this going to take weeks and months before the SEC would even reach out to a Tesla?
No, I don't think it has to take months. The SEC has the power under the Securities Exchange Act to compel a statement under oath from any person with respect to the public trading of securities. What is required would be that there would need to have been opened a formal order of investigation, which the enforcement staff can do on its own. Once that order is in place, the SEC has subpoena power. They have the ability to call people up on the phone. And if Tesla is well advised, it wouldn't wait for a call like that. It would be supplying information to the SEC before they even asked any questions.
If the SEC were to determine that funding was not secured, what are the penalties for Elon Musk?
Well, the penalties are both civil and criminal. If you make a false statement in connection with the trading of securities, you run the risk both of having to pay for the damages you caused, and also you run the risk of a criminal prosecution.
But in terms of his own trading, at least my understanding is he's not selling his shares. You're talking about everybody else's trading.
Yes.
Yeah, how would you determine what the damage caused here? I mean, what the short... I mean, right now the damage is with the short sellers, right?
Well, the damages to the short sellers, yes, and it may be to people who were selling because before this announcement hit the public airwaves. He took the unusual step of announcing this during the middle of a trading day, which is highly unusual and very problematic.
Harvey, there have been questions, some might call them cynical questions, around the idea of market manipulation, whether this is a, quote, short squeeze to manipulate the shorts out of the stock, or whether, and perhaps more provocatively, there's this convertible bond that's worth $920 million. If he can get the shares to stay over $360 for some period of time before the deadline, those bonds, rather than have to pay out in cash, can get converted into shares. How would the SEC look at that particular issue?
For there to be market manipulation, the law requires that the SEC prove intent. That is, Musk would have had to have had an intent to artificially influence the price of his securities. One of the difficulties in that regard is that in 2017, he previously said in print interviews that he contemplated going private at some point in the future. But if his comments were directed solely to influencing the market price, then it could be manipulation. The SEC would go about that by seeking all of his emails, seeking records of his telephone conversations, to whom he spoke, and the like, to see whether there's any indication of intent.